thank you guys for being here. I know that it's been very busy for all of you traveling around promoting this movie, collecting awards, which have been coming very rapidly for your work. So just to begin with, what is it like to be associated with Life of Pi at the moment? It's got to be an exciting time.
I'm very proud. I'm quite proud, and I'm proud of everybody work on the movie. 3,000 of them work on the movie for about 4 years. Most of all, I'm kind of relieved right now. For a long time, I carried this anxiety: is the movie gonna work or not? I know visually it's pretty good. After a while. But the ending, I wasn't sure how people take it, because it's very much against your normal movie procedures. It actually challenges what you just saw, which I assume people would like. So yeah, and it's a very expensive movie. So I was having this great anxiety. Everything about this movie seems to be uphill. They have to be difficult, not just kid, tiger, water, 3D. Just the whole thing. It was like Pi's ordeal. Drift across the Pacific with the tiger. Don't know where it's going. Don't know what's real or not. So that my life is, and these people's life, kind of parallel to that. Mine more so than that, because they can be very proud of themselves. You can see that evidently it's very good looking, but I don't know how people take the movie. So it's a relief, to be honest. Thank you.
Well, let me begin with the question that I would guess is on most people's mind before and after. Just whenever they hear Ang Lee's made a 3D movie, I guess what would motivate you to try that at this point? It's not something, I don't think any of you guys had worked on a 3D film before. Had you, Claudia?
Yeah,
okay.
I worked on Tron. Yeah.
Okay, Tron. So, but I guess it's a whole new world in a way. Why did you feel the desire to venture into it? I asked this to Bill and to Ang, and for Claudia, why to go back into it? Is it? I guess what was the driving reason for you?
It might sound funny, but I was very intrigued by the book when it first came out. When I read it, I didn't think there was a movie. About 4.5 years ago, when I was approached by Fox to do the movie, I could not stop thinking about it. The reason I thought of 3D is I literally don't know how to make this movie. It's a philosophical book, and on one side, artistically, and then it's a very expensive movie. At that time, I didn't even know if I could make the tiger or the ocean. So these two relations seems like irrational number of pi. It didn't make sense. So one day, just a funny thought I had. What if I have another dimension? Maybe I can see the circle. And then I tried it with because back then I only saw cartoons with 3D that's done well. For live action movie, I didn't really see anything. Of course, like 9 months later, I saw Avatar. That was very encouraging. I did my research. I thought it would be very good with water. It's because we're doing a drift movie without Tom Hanks. And how do you immerse the audience into the world of Pi? It becomes very important. And that will be, and I also thought, this is about God. It's not even about religions, about faith. The part he's on the ocean is when he spends time with God, not when we talk about it or when he'll approach the shore. It's actually the journey itself that you have to have a very unusual feeling or something new. And I was inspired by the cartoons, even though I don't know what live action picture would be like with 3D. I just need that extra dimension. Maybe it will look like a stage. I don't know. Maybe it's more closer to life, or maybe it's just more elusive, because you cannot touch the screen. The 2D, you know where it is. But now 3D, you don't even know where the image is. It's actually more magical, more elusive, more untrustworthy in a way. So I just that sort of ignite my thinking about how to approach this movie, and that affect me how to conceive the movie, how to write the movie, how to make up that frame I had. So it all relate to the other dimension. It sounds abstract, but that's how I got into that 3D world. Of course, we learn a lot along the way.
Well, I guess that's the next question. Just logistically, if you could be as terrific a filmmaker as you were in the 2D world, but if you've never made a 3D movie, how do you even know where to begin? And again, I would love to just get for each of you, as you first dabbled into it, how do you even know where to start? Do you talk to people like?
Yeah, I'll take classes, and then pretty soon you realize you should do the opposite from what people taught you, because it's so new. And nothing wrong with their class. It's just like next year people will do it differently from this movie. We're so new to this. Actually, being well trained, as I think we're like some of the best trained in the business, but that's kind of a disadvantage because we're trained to compensate the lack of volume, the dimension in 2D filmmaking, which is all we did for the last 100 years. We associate movie with two dimensions. You compensate. Yeah. They do lighting to compensate. They do all kinds of tricks to compensate the lack of dimension. That becomes the art itself. So the better you're trained and you're good at or talented, it's kind of a bigger hurdle you kind of go over to perceive something kind of new in front of you. So working is kind of hard because everybody's, there are hundreds of people working with you. I try to tell the operator, don't frame like it's 2D. The edge is different, not just the edge violations. It's just very hard. Or lighting. It's just very hard, but because the difficulty, I think the whole process is inspiring. It which is what this movie is about, examine what you see, what illusion is. I think it's been very inspirational and educational. Looking back when I see the 2D version, because I had to deliver it, I think it's still a pretty good movie. But I don't think I can make this movie without the process of thinking in 3D.
So, Claudio and Bill, in your capacities on this movie, did you feel, did you try to reach out to others who had sort of done this before on an Avatar, on a Hugo, on something like that?
I did. This was my first film in 3D. I remember early on, Aang asked us, he came to us and asked a question, does a 3D character look more or less real? I had no idea. So we had to try it out. And I remember we just did a test. We took, I had done the lion in the first Narnia, and we took and rendered two eyes. And I think back to how we set up that shot, and it was completely wrong. But at the time, I remember going to find every expert and hear the pundits saying, these are the 10 rules of what you absolutely must do in 3D. And it struck me that every pundit said something completely different. So maybe the reality is that no one really knew what it is because it's so new that we're all trying to figure it out. And I think that's what these guys show, that you really you can do new things. It's a brand new medium, and it's really ripe to explore and ripe to. At the time, this is 3 years ago, and I'm in visual effects, so we're doing these big blockbusters, and those were the kind of movies that were being done in 3D. And I told people I'm working on Life of Pi, and it's in 3D, and they're like, "Why is that 3D?" And I think, what this shows is that it's not 3D is not something that is the sole purvey of the of the explosion and the spaceship. It's something that it can be used to tell dramatic stories, and it can enhance a dramatic story. And if you come to 3D with and embrace it and use that in your technique, it can really increase the cinematic experience artfully.
I mean, yeah, there was a lot of things. I mean, I did one movie before, and there is people that tells you all the rules, and I kind of started with all the things you shouldn't do, and I did a lot of that, and I kind of, and then you watch movies and you figure out what kind of works and doesn't work. I mean, we've learned, I've before we started this movie, I just watched a ton of movies, and some went a complete wrong direction and actually was a little bit nerve-wracking. And then we kind of taught us to explore a new direction. So I mean, the rules of 3D I don't think are always continuous. Like you can't say like one thing is for all. Imagine just depth of field for one thing. So if you're looking at an actor, everything falls off naturally. But maybe in a wide scene, you want to kind of look around, and that's kind of a different feeling. So you kind of got to have that in mind when you start framing. But yeah, there's definitely a different kind of sensation of when you have an actor either forward the screen or backward the screen, how aggressive that feels, how you feel emotionally about that. There's a great scene also where Pi's floating, where the ship is sinking and he's out in this space here, and there's kind of a great separation between, this portion of the world and also the sinking ship. So I just think there's definitely things you could look to that are definitely unique. And when I first started shooting the movie, I wasn't even totally sure about 3D, but when I did the test, I did a test off Venice Pier, and we just got the camera down on the water edge, and for me, I just saw the water, and I was just completely sold at that moment. Once the screen started to tilt forward, and I saw it go forever, I was like, all right, let's just explore and just keep on going further than whatever I did before in my previous movie. But it's
water is actually the first moment that I really saw what 3D. One of the things that 3D was going to bring to this. Ang does a ton of research for all his films, and one of the moments that I'll never forget is when he brought us out on a Coast Guard cutter off the coast of Taiwan into heavy surf, and we're so we're on this boat. It's crashing up and down. It looks awesome. There's these huge waves, and I have my 2D camera, and I'm taking a picture. And every time I take a picture, I look at it. All the drama's gone because you've lost all the undulations in the waves. You can't see that in 3D. All that stuff is captured. You can and when we're sitting down on the deck with Pi, you can see all the little ripples, and that was something that I saw. 3D is really going to enhance this part of the journey.
Like in 2D movies, like Perfect Storm, those waves are, if you calculate, it might be 200 feet,
Yeah.
like 10 times more than a big wave. But it has to be that big to even impress you, to make impression. But in 3D, we did no more than 6 feet. Even the storms are no more than 30 feet. And you just feel the force. You feel you're right there. You feel like, claustrophobic. It's very real. I remember that test you did. You just have to change the framing. Normally, when you look out to the ocean, like 2/3 would be the sky. But I remember he was shooting that, and just somehow he just go down. And that feels right, like everybody's instinct. 2/3 has to be the water. It's just naturally an instinct. Anybody.
When you go back today and look at what people were saying, scholars, journalists, people were so impressed about when Citizen Kane came out, I think one of the things they focused in on was the deep focus, the use of deep focus that Greg Toland and Orson Welles used. And I want to ask all of you about that, because here, what they said that offered you the chance to do was you pick what you want to focus on. There's multiple layers, planes, whatever. It's up to you, and you can watch it 3 different times, 20 times. You'll focus in on different stories every time because you choose. In this case, with 3D, it introduces, as you noted, this whole additional group of planes and layers and things. And I think last night I was talking with Bill, and you were saying that it was very important to all of you, and I think it was sort of Ang's vision that this is actually consistent with the story. You choose which one you want to believe in or follow or whatever. And I just want to ask, just if you can talk more about that.
Oh, what's the question?
No, just taking it, the fact that by offering choices of what to look at.
Inherited in that. I don't know if years from now, when we get used to this media, it will still have that effect. But the fact that it is new to us, I think it sort of forced you to go there. I think really, the movie really takes advantage that is something new, that we have free choices. I've noticed that the dissolves works very differently, and of course, where you can look at the conversion point, the staging is somehow new to us. And I discovered that, for example, that pie watching, floating in the mid water and watching the big ship sinking, you're actually doing the over shoulder and point of view at the same time. That's how we envision ourselves doing things, or dreaming about yourself doing things. I've discovered many things. What else was I gonna say? I also found that multi-screen, which I tried in the movie Hulk, which is dazzling, but it works so much better here. You can see every picture well. I think that will be, and then you can do the
during the
function,
montages and
montage.
yeah.
Many advantages. Yeah.
The first time I saw this movie, the question that was on my mind was how much of Richard Parker is real Tiger, how much of it is digital Tiger, and I got the answer last night, and I was astounded. So I wonder if we can point this one to Bill first, and then I have a follow-up for Claudia. What's the percentage breakdown?
There were 178 Tiger shots, and 20 of them were real. So
And
the
it's
rest were
seamless
visual effects.
integration. Yeah. So that means that for like the 85% or whatever that were digitally recreated, what went into that? How many hairs on the tiger? How many? Just the stats are astounding.
It took us about a year to make the digital model that's in the computer, and the final version had 10 million hairs and would take about 30 hours to calculate a single frame. I think we figured out the tiger in the water and other things. If we have a lot of computers when we calculate these things, but if we only had one, it would have taken 1,633 years to compute all the frames for Life of Pi. So, but it took a lot of time, and we did a lot of study. We did have real tigers on set, and that was for several reasons. One, Ang wanted to make sure he held our feet to the fire and put the bar as high as possible. So we had some real ones in there, and it also gave us the opportunity to spend 8 weeks and get tons of detailed reference and studying their behavior, their mannerisms, how they interact with certain things, and on top of it, we also got access to the trainer, whose name is Terry Laportier, who spent 30 years with tigers, because we really wanted to know it's important for the story that the tiger is a real animal. But, older Pi tells us, or the Pi's father tells him that animals don't think like we do, and if you see yourself, it's just your emotions reflected back at you, which meant that our tiger had to be completely genuine, down to things like how, as an animator, if you're going to animate a scene, you might find yourself unintentionally resorting to anthropomorphism, making them act like people. When the tiger jumps out and realizes that he's also stuck in the middle of the ocean, how does he react? A person might get scared, and we could have animated the tiger, doing tigerish people things to show that he's scared, but we really wanted to be genuine to a tiger. And little anecdotes. Terry told us that a tiger, when he's scared, shows that by acting as nonchalant as possible. He's the tiger spooked, but he's saying, you're not phasing me. I'm going to act, I'm cool. You're not bothering me. So we try to get those kind of things and those genuine mannerisms, and we worked really hard to try to incorporate that in our tiger.
And you said that having spent a little time watching the real tiger, you concluded that if this was a real story.
Yes. The tigers were in they're from France. That's where the trainer is. And the very first day I went to see him, I went with my animation director, and we looked at each other after the first second and said, Pi's not going to make this journey. There's no way he makes it.
So, Claudio, when 85% of the scenes that the tiger is going to appear in, there really isn't a tiger in the scene, how do you go about framing it, deciding what are you actually shooting? I'd ask the same question to Suraj if I could say, how do you act against nothing? But how do you?
We did have a big previs that we kind of watched the whole movie. I mean, the 3D is a little bit of a cumbersome beast. It takes a while to change lenses, so you have to be a little bit more precise on how you on your choices. There's not as much coverage as you may have. It just takes. I mean, for us to change lenses, it was like 15 minutes. I mean, finally they got newer ones now, and it's a lot better. But all those things just take so much time, and in the tank it's just so much work. And we had also stand-ins that play the role of the tiger. And so we're normally, before we go to a scene, we talk with Bill, and then we're checking the what kind of weather was out there, and then I sort of create the kind of weather, and we feel like we're in the right place, in the right sky, in the right background, the mood, and how that feels. And so all these things are kind of integral in what sets the tone of the tiger. And we didn't always want to make the whole movie. It didn't always want to be like glorious skies. Sometimes it wanted to be like hot, so it's a little bit crispy, the scene. So you have a sense of heat. So, I think those are all the things that kind of have ebb and flow. I think you need all that to make the glorious points just even stand out further. I think that's also storytelling, and I think that's also works in almost all aspects of filmmaking. 3D, visually, what's all of a sudden becomes more beautiful than ever. I think everything kind of needs that little kind of ebb and flow.
I'll speak a little bit on Suraj's behalf since you brought him up, and I have to say, I've worked. Part of my role is to work with the director and work with the actor to say where the animal is or the creature is and what they're doing. And I've worked with a lot of talented actors who've been on the business a lot, and not all of them are very good at this. But Suraj was fantastic. You could tell him the tiger is going to be over here. He's going to roar and move over to this spot, and he's not only he did all his own stunts. He's sitting on the boat trying to balance as the thing's going back and forth, which is hard enough. But you could see in his eyes that he was tracking the tiger in his mind, and he sold it for us. We would do other things, when things got more specific. That same guy who went with me to France to meet the tiger earned his pay by donning a blue suit in front of the whole crew and jumping on the lifeboat and being the tiger to interact with Suraj. But that so we do that to help him. But he was fantastic about that.
And it's also very tough. You have to be so planned because most of the action when we're doing the cameras, you have you're shooting in a tank and then there's a wall. And it's 50 feet between you and the actor. So it's very. So you have to be really well planned about where everything's going to be. It's not like you're on ground and you can just kind of move the camera over here. There has to be kind of a coordination from everything. So he really has to know. Suraj has to be really in tune about where the tiger's going to be, where the camera's going to be to see the tiger, and how that and how the 3D set up to see both as well.
The sequence that blew me away the most, and there are a lot to pick from, but is the one that you were recognized with an award for last night at the International 3D Society, and I believe previously by the Visual Effects Society, and that is the flying fish going past the boat. It's just unbelievable, and I have to. I spoke a little bit again last night with Bill about just the logistics that went behind that were used to make that come to life. But can you, Ang, talk about just how you envisioned that to begin with, and then how it was actually put into, sort of brought to life?
That's a section. It's all about food structurally and about the wonders of the ocean. So flying fish, one thing exists in the book, I thought would be a great scene for that. And also he has to fight the tiger. It would be a highlight. It's going to be a fantastic scene. It matters how fantastic it can be. None of us experienced flying fish hitting us at that number. So a lot of that is imagination. We imagine the sound will be great. Actually, I followed the studio for a long time not to put music there because the sound is so great. I want to hear them. And I also have a thought that I want to change frame ratio. Some of you might notice that once you throw the fish, it becomes sort of anamorphic. For two reasons. I think that's the best way to watch the scene. Secondly, I can really do the 3D. This is like a showcase for 3D. One scene you really can show off that I can stick some of the fish, especially the tail, out into the black, so to give you that extra feeling of it's right in front of you, it's outside of the screen. That scene was really fun. We were just imagining. There's a previs, everybody knows, and we're playing the shots. And Suraj will have a lot of PAs throwing rubber fish at him. And this is a scene we all have to work very closely. I think especially for it's his showcase. He has to tell us, advise us where it might be going. that we have to plan very carefully. So in the future, the work is a lot easier. A lot of planning, a lot of imaginations, of course.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
And Bill, you said they each fish had a brain in a way.
Yeah, whenever you do crowds like, and this went for the flying fish and the meerkats and some of the dolphins, you don't animate each individual fish. You actually use a piece of software that it's artificial intelligence. You give it a brain, and they can look at what's in front of them and decide they're going to veer one way or the other, and they kind of do their own thing. So you throw a bunch of fish in, and they go. It's funny. You have to sometimes spend time doing. Where's Waldo when you find the meerkat who's walking off the cliff somewhere and you paint him out. So, but they do. It is a lot of fun to see almost emergent behavior come out of it. But that's how we attack those things.
And yet, I'm sorry.
In terms of lighting, we decided to go as gold as can be. So 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's how he was lit for.
Couldn't have been more beautiful. And I thought maybe that would be the most challenging scene, but I've been told that it was actually in fact. The storm sequence was in a lot of ways even harder. Is that the sense among all three of you?
Yeah, it was
tough.
Yeah, it was just water on the lens was a really challenge. I mean, we had just these huge, massive rooms, and in fact they were so strong the air going in front of it would actually almost lift the camera. Like once you turn it on, the camera just so you had to build like a little diverter. I mean, it's just to keep water on the lens is just on your eye, and that's so painful. So we just spent so much time working on that, and then there's humidity and just the waves and keeping the guy in frame and the frame, all the delays. It was a lot of work.
We started shooting that sequence day 2, and it was off and on. It was day 78 when we done the last shot of that sequence.
Crazy. So at the end of the movie, we're all sort of left with a question, a lot of questions, but I wonder for each of you, did you have to sort of have in your own mind a belief in which of these stories you felt was true, or does it not really matter?
Well, as a filmmaker, it's pretty obvious. The one story tells 75 minutes to be told, and the other is like 5. But I would like to see people take movie very differently, which one they believe or which one they prefer. There'll be millions of ways of reading it. So, for my imagination, whichever angle people come from, I have to make it work. There has to be unity. They have to round up the story themselves. So in some ways, I'm thinking the movie like I'm doing like design as the software for video game. You get to play it. So it's more like that instead of a storyline that's very definite, has a beginning, middle, and end. And there are people who like symbolism and this. They have to plant the seed so they can. Each seeds they have to round up for as much as I could imagine. It's a lot of fun to make movie that way.
Yeah. So
for where uncertainty is your main target.
Just one last question from me, and then if we could take a couple from the audience. And I just want to ask you guys, from the beginnings of this project, which sounds like some collaborators bond over dinner or drinks. You guys were bonding over leeches and seasickness.
Yes.
So from the day, if you can just step back for a moment and just sort of recall where you came from, and now $550 million worldwide, all 11 Oscar nominations, great reviews. Can you just sort of believe the journey that you've all gone on with the project? Forget the journey that you're telling in the film. Can you digest it?
I mean, the leech thing was kind of my thing. I mean, that was day one, and I got in a leech field, and I was covered in leeches, and day one was me in my underwear running down the street. So that was my day one, and I was going like, what am I doing for a second? And I was very frustrated, but it's been, thank you. It's a good place to go all uphill from there.
I think I'll sum up. I did a little quick calculation at the end of the project. I wanted to write this email to the crew to summarize the journey. And I calculated the number of days, and I started dividing it up and number of weeks, and got to number of years. I almost was on it for 3.14 years, but it was 3.18. So,
For me, it's really parallel with Pi's story. The toughest, the most hopeless days was the time when I'm most spiritual. I'm with God. I was most focused. I was living my life most full. I was living with fear, anxiety, and everything. I very much like Pi. For what he could see, he's just going up and down. He's going nowhere. It's not like he knows which day. We do have a release day. I'm better than he is. I know there's a release day. There will be an end to this. But for a long time, I feel pretty aimless. So when I reached the shore, when I finally delivered the movie, and now it's very rewarding. People seems to embrace it in different ways. Actually, I more feel like he reached the shore. He just collapsed. And all those gods and stuff are leaving me.
Well, and
it's exhaustion, and I don't know.
And we should just put that in some context quickly. That with some movies that
It's a relief.
Yeah, some movies have massive movie stars at the center of them who they can send off to promote them. Mr. Lee has been traveling the world like an ambassador. Or Secretary of State, because you are the star of this movie, and in a lot of ways, and I know it's been
I wish
draining.
I could take them with me.
Yes, it's been but that itself has been that's been a draining thing, but in some ways rewarding to see it received around the world, right?
Yeah, just hear the question they're asking, their difference. Yeah, it is tiresome. Not the talking part, but the flying part. But it's rewarding to see all the faces lit up.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.